Now, from today, Cubans will be able to travel abroad without special permission from their government. For 50 years, under the communist regime led by the Castro family, there have been severe limits on foreign travel and penalties for Cubans who have chosen to live abroad. Under the new system, Cubans can travel abroad without an exit permit or a foreign invitation, provided they have a valid passport. Sarah Rainsford now reports.
The days of queuing for permission to leave Cuba are over. Until now, even a holiday meant a trip to an emigration office like this. Lots of money, uncertainty and paperwork. Now, all Cubans need to travel is a passport. So 23-year-old Daniel is here applying for his very first. He told me his father left Cuba for Miami on a homemade raft when Daniel was very small. Now he plans to travel legally to join him.
I want to have an American dream. I want to live in another country because I want to travel to explore another country. Well, this is my dream.
It's a dream that many share here. Una Noche is a feature film, but many thousands of Cubans have made rafts like this in real life, like Daniel's dad. The United States allows those who make it to shore to stay. Cuba argues that lures people into danger. But even these actors have left Cuba now. All three were invited to a film festival in New York and stayed. That's how Maylil lost her sister, but she told me she understands.
It's because of how things are in this country. Young people's material needs. The things we can't get here. It's the American dream. That's why so many families are separated.
The US interest section in Havana already issues more than 20,000 émigré visas a year. Tourist visas are far fewer, harder to get, but many more people are likely to try now. Cuba hopes the traffic will flow both ways. With the United States just a short distance away across the water here and still so enticing, the Cuban government has taken a gamble. It's betting that by allowing people the freedom to travel, they'll go, perhaps work abroad, and then return here to Cuba. It's a huge change from the days when those who left this island were labelled gusanos, or worms, and condemned as traitors. Some, like athletes and vital medical staff, will still face restrictions. Many others will struggle to pay for plane tickets. But slowly, this island is opening up to the world. Cubans now have that little bit more freedom. Sarah Rainsford, BBC News, Havana.
Well, quite a momentous change. Joining us to discuss what this will mean for the citizens of Cuba is my colleague Lilia Heredero, a correspondent for the BBC's World Service. She's a Cuban national who did leave Cuba 5 years ago to experience the old visa system firsthand. And Lilia, thanks for joining us. When you left, what did it mean for you in terms of being able to return?
Well, it was a very painful decision in my case because I wanted to leave the country and I applied for this exit permit that from today it doesn't exist anymore. And it was not only very expensive, but it also meant for you saying that you were leaving forever. So it was an indefinite leave from your own country. So it meant for me that they took my ID card away, and I will remember that moment forever. If I had properties in Cuba, they were confiscated, and it meant in my case that I was only able to go back 1 month a year. Now that is my case because I left legally and because I got the exit permit. Now many people didn't get it. It was denied to many people, mainly doctors, mainly professionals, but now these people can go back, so it is a big change.
And what do you think it will mean for those still living there now? Do you think there will be a fairly major rush, an exodus?
Well, first of all, let's remember that they would need valid visas to go and travel. But yes, it will mean something huge for people. For 50 years, Cubans have not been allowed to travel abroad as tourists. So potentially, for those who have the money, it will mean being able to go abroad on holidays and, you know, to see the outside world. I remember once in Havana talking to a child, and he was saying to me, I want to be a tourist when I grow up, because that is something that wasn't allowed. So now
So you had never left? You had never been outside Cuba before until 5 years ago?
Well, I had for different reasons, because my parents worked for the state and I was lucky enough to get a permit and my parents wanted to go back. But that is not the case for many people. Famous blogger Joanny Sanchez, for example, has been denied a permit like 18 times. So now we'll have to see what happens with critics of the government, for example. And for many people who defected the country, so people who actually got an official permit to leave, like in my case when I was a teenager with my parents, but people who got an official permit and defected, those people were not allowed to go back. So we're looking at thousands of families that have been separated, that have been split, and specifically doctors, for example, who were not allowed to go back at all. Now these people, so this big Cuban diaspora, which is 2 million strong, these people will be allowed to go back. They will regain their citizenship rights in the country. So if they want to go back and invest in the country, or if they want to leave, go back and resettle in Cuba, they're allowed to now.
Lilia, this is a momentous moment, this is a momentous time, I should say, for the people of Cuba. From the US perspective, do you think they will now worry about an immigration problem?
Well, I think this has happened in the past and in many occasions, in the 80s, in the 90s. We've seen massive exodus into the US. Remember that the US has a law which allows any Cuban citizen who touches ground effectively to, after a year and a day, they are allowed to remain in the country. So I think pressure will mount in the Congress of the US and see if this law changes. Also, remember that US citizens are not allowed to travel to Cuba as tourists. So now that Cuba seems to be opening up its doors to the world, we'll see what happens if the US might want to change this policy towards the Cuban government. So these are all talks within the island that, you know, pressure will mount and things might happen.
Lilia Heredero, thank you very much indeed. Thanks.
Pleasure.